Hello, this is Paul Frazier again from Western Ohio Bigfoot Research. And tonight I have another guest. His name, well, I know him as JJ Squatchman. I'll let him divulge any more than that if he wants to. Oh, and we were waiting on Ernie, and now he just showed up. Hey, Ernie, we just started, and it's good to have you on.
Yeah, same here. Good to see you guys. How
Hey,
you doing,
Ernie.
JJ?
Ernie Davieau. And your Yeti sounded really good, Ernie. It's really crisp and clear.
Oh, I am?
Yeah,
Good.
you're coming out real good.
I'm turn this up there because I couldn't hear you too well. Now I can hear you a lot better.
Yeah, I just did the intro, so you're right on time.
Oh, awesome. Yeah.
I introduced him as JJ Squatchman, and I said he can divulge any more than that if he chooses to or not. But
Yeah, that way there people be able to pick it up a lot quicker because I know he has his own group and stuff. So rather than have
I'm just going to show this real quick. This is his YouTube channel. Here we go. Whoops, wait a minute. I got it on the wrong thing. I forgot I was showing him what all of the slides I had, and let me go back up. There we go. This is his YouTube channel.
Oh, let me see that.
Winfred Wildman Research Organization.
Yep.
Winfred, Connecticut. I don't know. Should they Google Bigfoot found to find it, or should they Google WWRO?
I would go with the Winsted Wildman to find it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Winsted exactly. Wildman.
Yep. I've seen that on some of your posts a couple of times.
Yeah, I was telling him I kept seeing the WWRO, and I never knew what it meant until I found his YouTube channel, and then I realized it. It's like, oh, that's what that's about.
Yeah, it's a long name, but it's good to have the roots going back into history.
Yeah.
Yeah, that goes back definitely. Far too.
1895.
1895. Do you think that he had anything to do with what was I going to say the tax collectors or anything? I know that the tax collectors did use a lot of the past from, on the other side of Massachusetts, where Connecticut is, they have all the colonial villages in there.
Oh, yeah.
And I know the tax collectors came from there, and they went up through all the hill towns, but they had to go up through the Cobble Mountain area, which at that time was probably a lot more treacherous, considering that the reservoir wasn't really there, but the gorge, the Granville Gorge.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, which is pretty awesome to see.
It was on a route that they called the Albany Turnpike. And it went from Albany, New York to Hartford, Connecticut.
Right. I know there's that Uncommit path that you and I talked about too that goes up along from actually I don't know where it actually starts, but I know it goes up through that Drake Mountain area up through Blandford, down the back side of it, over through Russell, up Montgomery Mountain, out through the hill towns out that way. It follows the whole mountain ridge along the way.
Yes.
Up to, what is it, Pittsfield? Is it Pittsfield out there? I think so, yeah.
Yeah, Pittsfield more towards the center.
Yep, right. I think that's Cobble Mountain right there. It is.
That's your area where you had your sighting.
Yeah, Cobble.
Yep. Yep. That's the area that there's been quite a few sightings in that you're aware of, JJ. The ones on Sodom Mountain there, which is the backside of Drake Mountain.
Oh, yes.
Area. They've had quite a few there. I guess they've seen some of the eyewitnesses seen 4 of them near a cave on that side, which is only, I believe, there was a scout reservation there or something in that area at one time too.
Wow.
And that's only 4.2 miles from where I was. But maybe you want to talk about what you've been doing in that area and what you've been seeing. You know,
Yes, I've been working
Well,
south of this area.
let me just drop.
Just
What are you
head due
Yeah,
south.
let me drop down to Winsted real
Yep.
quick,
Granville State
so we can go
Forest
from
and
there back
Barkhamsted
to
Reservoir.
see. Here's Winsted.
Yep.
And then a little to the west, Winsted right there. And you see between the reservoir and Winsted, there's People's State Forest. This state forest is on the BFRO website for a report of foot tracks.
Now, where are you
We got due
located?
north.
I live near the reservoir to the right, and
Oh,
up towards the
Come to the-
Massachusetts border.
Here's the state
Yep.
line.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you live near the Winsted Reservoir.
Cobble Mountain. There.
Yeah, it's the Barkhamsted Reservoir.
Okay, Barkhamsted.
Yep.
Yep, I know where that is.
Yeah, it's pretty long. It's large.
It is. It is. Now they don't allow people in there either, do they?
No, it's forbidden for people to go in. And I was talking to a friend just recently, and
What's that, Paul?
Barkhamsted
Is
Reservoir.
this a state park you're talking about, or a state forest?
It's a
Are you talking about?
reservoir that provides water for the Hartford area.
Right, but it is a state forest,
Oh.
I believe.
Well,
all
what is the
along
reason that they don't let anybody in? Do they have a reason?
They don't say.
Security.
Yeah.
I think they're afraid of people tampering with the water.
Yeah.
Water source. Oh,
Yep.
there we
And
go.
there
Homeland
may be other
Security.
reasons.
Yeah,
There may be other reasons too.
I'm sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
Actually, JJ, you sent me something on. I think it was a friend of yours that had maybe her brother or something worked with a couple of guys. Why don't you tell us about that one, because you know more about it than I do, and that's right in that area right there.
Yeah, she didn't know where I was doing my research, so this was a surprise. And she didn't know I actually lived right there. And she was saying that her brother would work for the water district, with securing the access dirt roads into the area. So he would make sure that the chains and the gates were secure to the access roads. When he would do this late at night, he would routinely encounter what he considered to be Bigfoot. A large, hulking figure, 8-9 feet high, usually at a distance with eye shine.
Along the road or what?
Near the road.
He'd catch it with his headlights, or?
I'm not sure. Now, unfortunately, the man has since died, and I'm just getting a secondhand report from his sister. But I thought he would have been an awesome guest to have on these type of shows. But
Oh yeah.
you know, but this is the same general area. I've had my research and my encounters, so I was blown away. I was like, finally, somebody that can back me up. Of course, Ernie backs me up, but he's a bit to the north.
Well, there's I guess the crew that he actually worked on, every one of the members of the crew actually, I believe, is that true that they've all had encounters in there also.
I believe her story went that they were all nervous. Nobody wanted to go secure those gates late at night or check on them.
Right. Exactly. And that's all along in that same area there, going all the way up through Cobble Mountain. There's been
it's a pure stretch of forest. It's beautiful.
It's very rugged in there. A lot of ravines, crevasse, you might want to call them crevasses, or like the gorge itself. You're looking at some spots on that gorge might be 100, 200 feet down.
Yeah.
To the water.
Definitely.
So, but
there's an area in Barkhamsted we call the Indian Council Cave. I believe Native Americans use this. It's like a very rugged rock field with overhangs of rocks that, in essence, form deep caves where you could keep dry, camp.
Wow, that sounds almost like some places in Hawken Hills, some of the caves in Hawken Hills that it's believed to have been used for the same reasons in that area. I was going to say, isn't there? You've had in encounters. I'll call them an encounter. Okay, class A, B, or C on your property where you live.
Yes.
You want to share? You would like to share that with us? You know, the handprint or what had happened on that, and that's all in this area.
This is after I started investigating
We could go through the
encounters.
pictures.
Sure.
Well, I mean, would you rather do? I don't know what you're getting ready to talk about, but would you rather do the video, or I mean, the audio, or your picture?
We
Or
could
both?
do the pictures first. I'll describe what's been going on
Okay.
with me.
Okay.
I started investigating encounters at this small farm in Granville, and which is a little bit north of Barkhamsted in Massachusetts. And I started investigating in the Granville State Forest, which is a state forest with recreation and picnicking and all that. It has some beautiful freshwater brooks, a lot of trails, and a lot of forests that I don't know. I always had a feeling about this place. I always felt that there was something here more than people know. There's black bear. There's actually moose. But yeah, there. I always felt like if Sasquatch was going to be in the area, this would be the area. So I started my exploration during the shutdowns when I had some time to kill. And I would go through Granville. I would do the tree knocks and get some knocks at a distance. And that surprised me because it was kind of a lark what I was doing. I didn't expect anything to happen. I would find these funny branch structures, the triangle branch structures that look like crude teepees. And in shapes and formations on the ground, like triangles, rectangles, like people were intentionally making symbols, the branches. Now, this structure here, this is half a mile from my house in Barkhamsted. And it goes up pretty high. It goes up like 15, 20 feet high.
Wow.
A friend of mine, David Myers, discovered this one. He's a turkey hunter. And he was off trail. It's not near a trail. It's not near where people normally go.
Yeah, those woods are pretty thick up there too. That looks up like a good jungle gym
Yes.
crawling around
Yes.
there.
Yes.
Now you're referring to the Granville area. The Granville area, just to put it into perspective, like the center of Granville, that's only what, maybe 2 miles from Cobble Mountain?
Yeah.
3 miles, 2 to 3 miles, and you're just on the other side of that right there.
Yeah, it's all
quite a few things going on there. Well, what else have you been experiencing in there?
well, I would see peekers from behind the trees. The dark shapes that would lean out, much
Yep.
like this photograph, and would peek back behind the trees. Now, with this photograph, this was like a 4-foot individual, not very large, but he ducked down beneath that fallen tree that's in front of him. And he would sit back up and stare at me, and he would duck back down. And he did this a couple times. I have it on video, actually. But unfortunately, it's a blob squatch. It's a blob.
Yeah.
But the behavior in the movement, I knew it wasn't a black bear doing that.
Right. Black bears don't do that. Yeah.
So in this vague blob squatchy like still frame, you can almost see what looks like a head on it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not very clear. I wish I had better camera equipment at the time.
It's tough too because you get a lot of I don't want to say condensation, but during certain times of the day, it's almost like a rainforest in some areas of the woods around there. It's like a kind of a fog that's going
Yeah,
through. And you're right,
mist.
that
Yeah.
whole area is perfect for them. Now, I think you've mentioned to me also that you have a handprint too. Could
Yes.
you tell us about that one there and how you got it?
This was happening after I was exploring the farm in Massachusetts. I started to have encounters at my house. Apparently, some people, I don't know if it's true or not, but some people call it tagging, whereupon you're not investigating them, they're now investigating you.
Right.
So I would get the slaps on the house at night. I would get activity in my backyard, in my woods behind my house. And on my car, this very small, oily handprint was left. Now, it wasn't my hand, it was actually much smaller than my hand. And it was left in a way that suggested that my trunk popped open and it closed it again. So it's a faulty trunk. It does pop open unexpectedly. But this handprint closed the trunk. It's smaller than my hand. And it's very oily, very muddy.
Wow. Now, how did you find that? Did you just find it before you went to work?
Yeah. Yeah. I got up in the morning and I looked at the back of the car and went, what?
Right. So
And
that
then
happened overnight.
this is an apparent finger mark on the car, which would be a side view of a finger, I believe. And it's significantly bigger than mine.
Yeah, significantly.
And once again, it's this mysterious oily substance. These marks, they stay on the car for months. Now, I don't have a garage. I don't put it under cover. And these marks, they survive snow, they survive rain, and they stay on the car. So whatever this oil is, it's very weather resistant. And here are some fingerprints on the windshield of my car. And the fingerprints are at least twice as big as that pale looking finger you see on the left. That's my finger.
Right. Wow.
So they're big. They're big fingerprints. And once again, it's that oily substance.
That's pretty interesting. That could be maybe from some native plants like cattails or something. Early in the spring when you strip them down and you go between the leaves and you take that gel out there for healing purposes and just for medicinal purposes. It could be something from plants.
I do have a lot of cattails around my home.
Do you?
There's a marsh area to the south of me.
That might explain it right there.
Yeah.
About what time of the year did this happen? Do you remember?
Spring.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's when the cattails aren't brown on the top and you can actually peel that piece off and eat that piece inside. It's like corn. And if you strip down the first two leaves off your cattail, you now come up to that gel and you can strip down that gel.
You're a good detective, Ernie.
Nature's corn dogs.
Nature's corn dogs. So it could be, it'd be interesting to try to do a little experiment with that if you could, because now's the time of the year to get one of them cattails. Just put some on your hand and maybe make your own print and just see how long it stays on there.
Yeah, do some smudges and see how long they last.
Yeah, that's true. Now, there's a brook, I think, out near behind your house where you're doing investigation too. Does that run towards those cattails, that marshy area?
Yeah, it goes right by it.
Oh, interesting. Yep. So maybe I'd like to share this, and you can collaborate with me here. That you had been on that trail at one time when we were speaking, because it happens to be the area that I was in. So you're actually the research guy there. You're like the eyes on, boots on the ground, telling me what's going on. You explained to me that before you had to cross the brook at one point, you come across where they put an X up right on the brook, and we discussed that. Do you remember that? You want to extrapolate on that yourself and come up with the conclusion that we came up with, if you remember that at all? Or
They were marking symbols on my normal trail
Yeah.
from where I go back there, and I'd leave little gift offerings back there. And once in a while, I might find something left for me. And yeah, the X mark has seemed to be like, this is where you cross. This is where we want you to cross, and this is where you should stay.
Right. Yes, I remember talking about that with you, and you had actually decided that what you're going to do is use that spot that as we don't want you to go any further. This is as far as you go, and you actually left like a gifting spot right there. Only to
Yes.
come back, I think, a couple of weeks later, find that they actually took the gifts and they moved the X, and it was now going up the stream. They didn't want you to go
Right.
up the stream. So my conclusion would be that's a feeding area where they get their cattails up that stream. Possibly. I haven't been there, but it sounds like it's possible.
Have you tried gifting tobacco?
I plan to.
Oh, okay.
Now, what would you suggest? Like raw tobacco or
Yeah, like leaves. I would,
Hmm.
if you can get a hold of the leaves. Yeah.
Yeah, unprocessed. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Ernie suggested that. So yeah, I
Oh,
plan to do that this
okay.
year. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you get feathers from there too? Is in one of your gifts? You did.
Yeah.
Do you remember what kind
Turkey feathers. First it was turkey feathers. Then there was a red hawk feather. Beautiful, beautiful feather. Actually, I have it right here, if you'll pardon me.
Yeah, go ahead. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, very nice. And you
Very
found
good condition.
that right where they put it near the brook there where they put up that yes.
I found this where my footpath begins behind my house.
Yep. Yep. I remember
And
you
I normally find foot impressions near the pathway too. And one was deep enough to do a cast of. And let's see, this is how big the foot is.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's a good
it's a substantial size.
yeah,
Yeah.
that looks like it's about 18 inches anyways. About how long would you say that is, JJ?
19 inches.
19 inches?
Yeah.
About how wide? What do you got there? 7 inches wide?
I'd say 7 to 8 inches between
Okay.
that.
Wow. Yeah.
I had to remeasure it. I'm a little fuzzy on that.
So do you think that there's family units in there? And if so, how long do you think they've been there?
I can only guess. Now history has them living in the area around Winsted and west of Winsted. 2 towns west of Winsted, there's a man that wrote a book called The One Who Runs and Hides, about his encounters.
Right.
And Chris Marola. And to our side of Winsted, I never thought they would be here. As a matter of fact, my mother would think she saw window peekers for a few years before I started investigating. And I never believed her because I'd say it's way too populated here. There's too many homes. They can't be. You know, I never thought they would be so brave. So out there, but they are so good at what they do. They are so good at disappearing and being covert that no problem.
Yeah, yep. They can run and hide. That's for sure. I think you were telling me about an article. I think you actually posted it. Was it the New York Times that, like 100 years ago or whatever? They actually it made national news.
Oh, the Winsted Wildman. Yeah,
Wild.
1895.
Right, that's where you
Very,
get. Right.
very big news story.
What year was
They
it?
had a posse going after the Winsted Wildman. They had National Guardsmen. They had hundreds of people combing through the woods around Winsted, Connecticut.
Yeah,
They never found him, obviously.
that's the most
Did
prolific.
it attack somebody?
No, but
I don't-
town selectman was the one who had the sighting. He was picking berries with his pet dog west of Winston, Connecticut, in a berry patch. And what he described as a naked, hairy man jumped from the bushes, screamed and yelled, and leapt into the woods with like incredible athletic ability. And he was so stunned by it, he told all his neighbors, all his friends. It ended up in the Winsted newspaper. And then from Winsted, it went to Boston, Pittsburgh, and New York.
Wasn't it funny that he would tell everybody and they all believed him, even though that was probably something unheard of? And nowadays,
There were other sightings.
everybody's heard of it. And you say you saw something and nobody believes you. It's kind of funny, isn't it? That how different it was back then.
Yeah. Yep. I think a lot of the people kept to themselves too, particularly the old timers. And this one here just happened and it got out, and that was their TV and everything. Probably they've heard little stories here and there that nobody wanted to repeat, and they all put it together and jumped on it. So, but that's all within that little area right there. Isn't there an Indian burial or an Indian settlement or something nearby you also?
Yeah, about quarter of a mile south of where I live, there was an archaeological dig done by Central Connecticut State University. And they found Indian encampments going back 4,000 years. And old tools, a lot of tools, spearheads, arrowheads, and all sorts of tool making. And in our own backyard, we have found a hatchet head, a hammerstone, and several arrowheads.
What tribe would that be up in that area? Do you know?
It's not Narragansett. It's
a weird name, because I know where I was on Drake Mountain. There's a boulder right there. They call it Painted Rock, and that is a boulder that represents the Native Americans that lived there. But I don't even remember their names. Also, I know it's out there.
No, if my mother was alive, she could say it immediately. I get these brain freezes.
Right. Let me ask you
I've got
something else.
This is that picture I was going to give you, Ernie.
You're going to give me. Okay.
I'm going to give it to you at some point.
Don't need my Christmas present.
I can't get it to show because of the stupid green screen, but it's a map of the country and it has all the tribal names.
Okay.
And in that area, it has Pennacook, Massachusetts.
How do you spell that, Immacook?
Narragansett, the one you said. Pennacook is like Pennacook.
No, there's another one too.
And then there's another one below called Pequot, Pequot. Pequot, yeah. And then I'm pretty sure I'm looking. Yeah, that's the Massachusetts. The other one is Mohican in that area, but.
There's one that begins with a P that I haven't heard. You know what I'm talking about, Ernie?
I can't think of their name. There's a lot of little ones around that area. If we took I'm sure you can lay the fact on this one here. If you took Drake Mountain and put it in the epicenter and you drew a 25-mile circle around it, that encompasses you. It encompasses the reservoir out near you. It encompasses Mount Greylock. It encompasses just about everything in that area. And I'd have to say, just from my own research, that probably in that 25-mile circle, they've got to have at least 30 encounters, which goes to my next question to you. Now, in your own professional opinion here, Do you think that there's a family unit in there or more than one family unit in there?
I believe there's a travel lane, and I believe there's variable Sasquatch tribes and family units using this
Right.
travel lane. And it goes through northern Barkhamsted, Heartland, into Granville, Massachusetts, up towards Cabo Mountain Reservoir.
Yeah, that's a huge area, very mountainous in there. Not too many people go in there to hunt. I know that when we were kids up in the Montgomery area, which is all in that same area there, we had an encounter with a mountain lion one time with two cubs, and there were bear. They were up there, and now I hear that there's moose coming back into the area. So there's a lot of things going on there, particularly that. And a lot of people probably feel that that you want to go up there and you want to do some research, but even the researchers don't want to go in there because of how can I say it's mountainous. It's a lot of steep, very steep. You might have to use ropes. I mean, I think it's Wildcat Mountain just to get up into there. It's really steep to get up in there, and that's all within that area. There's
very rugged.
Yeah, a million places that they could go and hide in there. You tell me. Do you think that they've always known that they've been watching people? Because obviously they've been watching you on where you live. So what's your opinion on that?
I believe that they've been watching from the bushes, from the thick forest canopy. I believe they know some English. And I believe they know that through generations of watching us. And the generations would certainly be reinforced by the fact that the Winsted Wildman was a big thing in 1895. There's been a very covert and traveling presence of Sasquatch in the area. And they know us very well, apparently. And the first time I heard an English word on my recordings, I was shocked. I was just shocked. I couldn't believe it. I figured it had to be a prankster, but like in the middle of the night at like 3 a.m. in the forest where no one knows what I'm doing,
Yeah, you are out there for sure. Where you live,
and you only prank people when you know what they're doing. Nobody knew.
Exactly. You can't pull off a hoax unless you know somebody's going to come along and find the hoax.
Right.
Let me ask you a question, if I could here, that you shared with me, and if you don't want to talk about it, you can just let me know. After your mom passed, this is something that you shared with me. After she had passed, could you tell us about, what was it, maybe 2 weeks after she had passed, you had a visitation?
Yes. One of the audio clips I sent Paul is of this visitation.
Which one?
Outside my bedroom window. It's the one I think that says, it's the one that starts the interview.
Oh, interview visit?
Yes.
Okay, here it is. I'll bring it up. Well, played just fine before. Now, I had to make these into a video. It wouldn't let me do an audio clip. I had
just
to make
a
it
straight
a video.
audio, yeah.
Okay.
But it should play. Here it goes. Can't hear it, can you?
No. I'm hard of hearing anyways, but
man, I tested it beforehand and it was really loud. Now it's not. My camera went out earlier too. I don't know if you noticed that. I don't know what's going on. It's never done that before.
Well, you can.
Let me get this. I'll take it out and bring it back and see if that makes a difference.
Okay. Because you can probably edit that out and splice it in there.
Yeah, just censor out the.
Yeah. If you could give me a little bit of makeup
Okay,
here.
let's try it again. Here we go.
Oh. Wow, JJ.
Yeah, outside my bedroom window.
That was like 2 weeks after your mom had passed.
Yes.
I remember we were talking about that, because we felt, and particularly you, felt that they knew her, and she knew them, definitely for sure. So that was their way of coming by and seeing, I think.
I believe so. Yeah.
That
Right outside my room, where it was late at night. It was light rain, and that was the voices I was hearing.
Wow, that's impressive.
What about the vocals and grunts? Does that go with that?
The grunts I
The one
filmed
that's
out by
called
the
vocals
brook.
and grunts?
The vocals and the grunts was a different occasion. I filmed that out by the brook where I left the gifting
okay.
with the gifts.
You want me to pull that one up?
Sure.
Well,
let me see. I may have to do the same thing on this one. Remove it and bring it back. Yeah. Hold on. I got to remove it and redo it. I don't know what happened, but it's not playing. I got to redo them all. Okay. Here we go.
did you just play that one time, Paul? Is that what you just did, or did you play it over a couple times?
That was one time.
One
No,
time.
that was just one time through.
Wow.
You want me to play it again, or?
Tell you the truth. I really like the first one a lot because it sounds like they're talking. Okay, this one here sounds like they're maybe just scolding another one that's there, huffing at them, just going, you know what I mean?
It sounds like an argument.
Yeah, that first one is definitely I can make it out. That's for sure. I'd put that right in there I'd be handing it off to Scott Nelson, that one there, asking him what he thought, or even Ron Moorhead, because he's heard those sounds before. I have too, and that sound really sticks out to me. That sounds
It's not a black bear, and black bear are the only large animal other than moose. It's not moose or black bear.
So. Yeah, and you would have to be pretty close to hear them snorting, smelling things. That definitely was something else outside.
That's when I would leave my recorder out by the gifting spot.
Wow.
And they knew about the recorder because I would leave it underneath a log, and they would bring it out from under the log and put it on top of the log.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah. So they didn't care about it.
Right.
They're just like, here it is.
Yeah.
Just letting you know they knew it was there.
Well, I think you and I have talked. We've been talking for quite a while now. That one of the things was you used to bring these other guys in there with you, and I was recommending that you no longer do that because of your frame of mind, the way that you think, and everything when you're going in there. What's going on with you? What level you're vibrating at? And I think that it all started really changing when you started going in by yourself, and they started recognizing you in there. I had another question too. I remember speaking with you also on the times of the year. As a lot of people are under the assumption that they don't migrate. Now, mind you, and when I say migrate, I'm not talking 1,000 miles or whatever. You understand what I'm talking about. They don't have to go that far. And if there are caves around, they probably leave behind some of their elders and bring back food for them or whatever. But in that area, the brush is, people can't really comprehend how thick that forest can actually get. With the mountain laurel, you can't see very far in front of you. It is literally like a jungle. So it might be the reason why they're not being spotted as much during the summertime. But even then, I would say they're still there, but they might have moved just down closer to the water's edge where it's cooler down in there. But we did speak about them coming back. I think it was right around the end of November, the first weeks of December. That's when I had my encounter, and we're trying to pattern them. And I think that's when it started picking up for you. Was it right around in there?
The visit outside my bedroom window was second week of December.
There you go.
Yeah. And that was 2 weeks after my mom died.
Wow. Yep. So that puts them right in there. They do travel through some of the areas. And, I know, but even Paul and I have spoken about this, the three of us here, that you're looking at your different plants that are growing. They're following food sources, and they're sticking to high ground and water sources. So perhaps maybe some of these state forests might be on a greenway. I don't know if other people understand what a greenway really is, but it's so that large game animals can get from point A to point B without being disrupted at all. Okay. Like they can make it all the way from Winsted, Connecticut, all the way up to the Canadian border, all the Appalachian Trail. It's unparalleled that they can just move right up through there and not really be seen by anybody. And they do know the woods. So we did kind of pattern them in there. I was wondering if you were aware of any other encounters, like maybe the Blandford area or anything. I know there's high strangeness in that area. I mean, particularly that Cobble Mountain area, there is high strangeness going on there. Orbs and hauntings in the little town. And when I say Granville, little town to people,
yes,
they don't understand how small this town actually is. The center of the town is maybe 8 houses.
Yeah, it's smaller than Mayberry with the Indian Barney.
Yeah, smaller than that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a very interesting area. I was a paranormal investigator before the COVID shutdowns, and I switched gears to Sasquatch. Now, it's funny though, with the Sasquatch research, I'm not huge into what they call the woo.
Right.
I'm not taking the paranormal angle, although I don't shut it out.
Right.
Like if people are experiencing mind speak, which I haven't, and if they're experiencing other paranormal events, I don't automatically dismiss it. But my focus is more on natural, scientific, down to earth, footprints, vocals, photo, that sort of thing.
Physical things,
because it's a pleasure to get out of the ghostly, ethereal, paranormal realm, which I was involved with for decades, actually. I grew up acquainted with Ed and Lorraine Warren and their family, and a lot of their students. I've been a guest at exorcisms. I've filmed and investigated a lot of poltergeist activity, a lot of ghostly activity. Orbs became commonplace. Orbs, especially, which are some type of ambient energy, which I'm not surprised orbs and Sasquatch are related, because it all ties into energy fields and electromagnetism, which apparently they're able to access. But that's getting into the woo.
Yeah, that is. That's like one thing at a time. But do you think that this has made you more sensitive to your research that's around there when you go out there and you sit for a while and wait? You think that's helped you out?
One thing that's happened to me through the decades is I become what they call clairaudient. So I'll hear whispers and murmurs, or other people with me don't hear a thing. So I'm not like a psychic where I'm picking up messages or anything, but
Right.
I'll hear whispers and things whereupon other people don't. And on my recordings, the whisper will be recorded. So I'll be like, did you hear that? Did you hear that whisper? No, no. And then lo and behold, on the recording, there's a whisper.
I know that recording, that very first recording you have on there, when that particular one, I think there's obviously more than one there, came up in to your window and stuff. To me, hearing them, as I can tell you right now, that's pretty convincing for me. Very, very, very convincing for me. How about that? I can make that out because that's what they sound like. I've heard other ones too, and I got to say that the other ones that I've heard too. And people got to remember, we can speak monotone. The three of us can speak monotone here, and just because one of us changes our pitch doesn't mean that it's a different language. It just means that we're just stressing a particular word or a particular phrase or something. And I think that's what's going on there. But the one that you have there, that's pretty much goes right hand in hand with the Sierra sounds. You can hear almost exactly like that. A little bit different, of course, because they're talking about something different, but the tone, and that's what I heard or I shouldn't say heard, I should say that's what I seen and heard in my encounter. So
it's like a deep, deep voice. It's like it's coming from their chest.
It is. It is. It's almost like, and I think Paul's put that out there, or maybe Russell Easterbrooks on, I think it was Turkish throat singing. Okay. Could that be going on?
Yeah, something.
How do they make it?
They're pulling from deep in their esophagus. They're pulling from deep.
Right.
Where when we talk, it's nasal, it's upper.
Right. Well, one thing that Scott Nelson talks about is that they will speak as they're breathing in as well as breathing out, which we don't. We only speak breathing out, but they do both.
Back and forth. Yeah.
That's the thing about that throat singing. That's what they do. So who knows? But in any case, back on that is that sound I recognize. That sound there, the first recording I recognize, and the second one I can pick up on it. It needs to be cleaned up a little bit, but that first one, definitely I recognize that. And for anybody who's ever heard them before, I'm sure they'll pick up on that too.
So when you heard their vocals at close range, it was a lot like that.
Oh, very much like that. And it wasn't just one of them. The two of them were actually the big one that was near me first and then took off and was standing there. And the other one came, I call it a smaller one, but still bigger than me, went running over to the other one. And that big one just started telling it, must have been telling it all about me because he finally pointed right at me, and the little one had to do a double look, bend over a little bit and do a double look on me. So I figured I was the topic, but I could definitely make out the two of them having a conversation. And, dogs don't do that. Dogs may bark at each other, but they don't go bark, bark, bark. And then the other one goes bark and bark, 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 back and forth. It doesn't go.
Right.
There isn't too much out there that does that. And to see them do it was incredible for me, because now I can actually say that's them. And that recording, I think that's the first time. I don't think you ever shared that one with me before. I think that's the first time that I've heard that, and that's impressive.
Good. I'm glad that I have a backup testimony to it.
What do you think? You're going to play it again? Cool.
Let me play. Yeah, I'll play it again.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
The very first two sounds, let me play it one more time. It does sound like it's breathing in as it makes the sound. Listen to it. Not bad, but the vocal part. It sounds like it's breathing in.
Wow. I'm impressed. You got me there. Yeah.
Oh, I have so much audio. I could share literally hours of audio.
Wow.
Yeah. There's one that's very shrill, like a shrill chatter sound. Almost sounds like a small monkey. Not that I'm implying they're monkeys. I would never do that. But it's a very shrill, frantic sound.
Not like a scream?
No, more like a chatter. Like,
well, I have two more audio that you sent me.
Like that.
Right. Yeah. Yep.
And then while
I have
during
two more
one of the
audio that you
shrill
sent
chatters, there's a big one that slaps the ground like a thud. So I interpreted that as a parent telling a kid, "Shut up."
Yeah. Well, you have a lot of activity. I know that you and I have spoken a lot about that area, and that's why you've actually taken it up in there, because it's a hotbed. And like I say, there's not too many people that want to go up there. Even the Hilltown Hikers Association has problems in there. They mark all their trails. Their trails go for miles and miles and miles, and
Right.
Their biggest problem is in that area. Their trail markers are being torn down. It's not like somebody's just
How far
taking
are
them.
you? How far are you from Dudleytown? Just out of curiosity.
Travel time about 40 minutes from Dudleytown. But I actually have a theory about Dudleytown, which is the famous haunted, cursed town of Cornwall, Connecticut, that I believe a lot of that is Sasquatch related.
That's why I was, kind of similar to Portlock in a way, that the whole town left or disappeared. It's gone.
Mm-hmm. There's a woman that lived on the outskirts of Dudleytown, one of the last residents, way back in the early 1900s. Her husband left for a trip to New York. He came home and she was incoherent and talking about monsters from the woods. And she described giant monsters from the woods, and they put her in an asylum. So I always raised an eyebrow with me, like, maybe she didn't go crazy, folks. Maybe she was seeing giant, hairy hominids from the woods.
Absolutely. That would be my guess. I mean, if I lived back then, well, let's put it to you this way, is before my encounter, I just figured that the Patterson film was just a fluke. They got one. It's dead now. It died of old age. I would have liked to. Every kid would have wanted to see one, I'm probably never, ever going to see it. So I just washed it off, But, yeah, I can imagine it back then, because people in general had problems with other people, particularly if they were female. They were going through their thing, and that is exactly what they would do. Is they would lock them up in the insane asylums.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Terrible.
Do a lobotomy, upper lobotomy, lower lobotomy. We could go
electroshock.
Everything. Yeah. There's some serious sanitarian psych wards up around there, up in New Hampshire too. Huge ones up there, and that's where they sent them all to. It was like one flew over to cuckoo's nest, and they would have buildings that would have tunnels connecting them together so that they could shuffle the people take them from one building so that nobody would see them, and shuffle them through the tunnels to the other building and give them their electric shock treatment or their lower lobotomy or so yeah, that would be protocol. That's what they would have done to her.
Yeah.
And that's all in
Dudleytown.
Yep, and that's pretty much all pretty close to that also. So
all northwestern Connecticut.
Yeah. Amazing. And I never realized a lot of it until I started speaking with you. And then I started getting contacted by other people from the area that were having encounters on the opposite side of that Drake Mountain, Southwick, right over where Sodom Mountain is. Right in there is a whole camping area. And that was one of the theories that I was working on with Paul, is I believe that what they do is they teach their young, just like any other animal, like the deer do. They bring them around and they point out what's going on. And, that one right there, you can trust them. That there is not a stick. That thing is dangerous. Don't go near anybody carrying one of those. If you do, be very cautious, and so on, and they may play little games with you, by throwing an acorn at you. If they really wanted you out of an area, they're not going to throw an acorn or a pine cone at you. They'll find something better to scare you with and have you run out of there. I don't believe that they're malevolent, that they're
No.
that would harm you. I mean, just like any other thing that's out there in the woods, if it's breeding season, you might be in trouble. Even if you're deer hunting, an antlered deer, a buck deer, could be a problem for you if it's breeding season. And rest assured, you might have a fight on your hands, and that's just with a deer. So looking at these,
The most aggressive behavior I've encountered so far is hearing a tree shoved down. And that was on a ridge opposite from where I was. And I thought it must be an individual that wasn't familiar with me. And
could very well be. What time of the year was that?
Late summer.
Late summer. Could very well be. Having more than one group passing through the area. I believe that there's more than one family unit in there. I would probably, on the sightings that come within that 25-mile circle, there's a couple of them that claim that they've seen 3 to 4 individuals together. So that right there, off of those eyewitness reports, that would give you 3 or 4 families within that 25-mile circle. So let's round it off. Let's call it 5 families in a 25-mile circle. If anybody wants to cut it down to 4. But in any case, what you now have is a clan, and those clans can help out and work in unison with the other ones to hunt. Because let's face it, all you have is a family unit, and you've got 3 children to feed. Okay, of that size, calorie intake. Your day is going to be pretty much taken up with hunting and foraging, but if you had members, other family units to form that clan, you would also set up your structures to signify what is your clan. It was like the Native Americans, the Turtle clan, the Bear clan, and so on. And this is your territory over here. And that you don't go beyond this right here. It's a marker for my cattails, unless you let me know that you're coming. Now, right. I just heard an interesting thing too, that I think House of Enoch, Cain, was speaking about the woodknocks. And he says, I believe that the woodknocks are to identify themselves. So somebody might be using 2 quick woodknocks, whereas another individual always uses just one solid wood knock. Okay, I think personally, that's what they're doing, is they're identifying with that, and he actually started using that, and he's been getting the knocks back because it's the size of the stick that he's using and how many times he's using that. And the way I come up with that conclusion, along with him on that, is that when the one that I encountered actually whooped in my encounter to the other ones on the other side of the stone wall, it was a very deliberate 3 whoops at a second and a half in between each whoop. Very deliberate. So I'm thinking that, has anybody noticed that when there's like 3 tree knocks, are they like bang, 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 or is it bang, 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 something like that, where it's deliberate, the same amount of time? I have heard where people actually said, well, it's like Morse code. Maybe that's why they're saying that. because what they're hearing is like a dot dash, an A, okay, or something like that, like an SOS, dot dot dot, dash dash dash, slower. So maybe that's why they're reporting that they think it's that type of a signal. So that could
I
be.
wouldn't doubt it. I wouldn't doubt it. Like they're using all sorts of forms of communication that we're so dull and unaware that we don't even pick up on it. The wood knocks, they're not like woodpeckers. They're deliberate dot dash like formations and the branch formations. Like I've encountered a figure 4 or a triangle with a line going straight up the middle. These signify something. They're not just random.
I wonder if they could actually signify the clans or the family
Could
unit
be.
or even the individual themselves. It could be. These are things that we overlook. We see them and we talk about them, but then that's as far as anything ever goes. We go, oh, I found one. Well, that's kind of like, if you're going to go cohogging, everybody's going to find a cohog. Some people might find a clan while you're cohogging or some other.
Right.
That's part of the research. Putting it all together is like all these little things lead us to the hypothesis that has to be proven. What is it, 2 times before you can call it a theory? Because we know that they're intelligent, and I've heard it before by somebody saying, "Oh, how do you measure intelligence?" And they were saying how they just put a mirror in front of a monkey, and because it's self-aware, it's aware of itself, it starts grooming itself in the mirror. That shows a level of intelligence. Well, these I'm going to call them beings right now. These beings actually do groom. They do groom because not all of them are stinky, and they might be stinky for a reason, but they do groom. And
I've heard some might have braids.
I've heard that. I have
Yeah.
heard that. And we can't throw that out. Definitely not. And since we do know that they have a language, well, then that tells me there's a level of intelligence there. Can it be repeated? This is something I spoke about with Paul. Is how would we measure that level of intelligence? Let's go with sign language. Well, if we go with sign language, and that level of intelligence was repeated 5 times to me. 5 times. I've seen 5.
Pointing to yourself, pointing to you.
And I repeated part of it back. And that's when it took action. And it has to be teaching that to its young. Where did it learn it from? It just didn't willy-nilly come up with this, and it was batting flies or mosquitoes out of the air when it was approaching me. It was doing these things deliberately. So that would take it all the way from the hypothesis all the way to the theory. And now that you have a theory, we come into that final question and the whole thing. What is your what are you going to do if you're out there and one of them steps out in front of you? Are we going to panic, or are we prepared? Are we going to make that move and try to communicate with them to take it to that next step? That's what's going to have to be done, because from there, it's going to be that researcher like yourself, JJ, and Paul. When that happens, I think you're going to get a lot more information. But the only problem with that's going to be is people are going to go, yeah, that buffalo jumped off that nickel real quick on you guys.
Now, with the little blob squatch I encountered, I tried communicating with him verbally. I might have approached a little bit, but I think they got too nervous. There was one nearby, and it seemed to be wanting that one to leave, the one that was sitting up and ducking down, sitting up again. Next time it happens with me, I'm going to sit. I'm going to sit and be chill and let them be as brave as they want to be brave. Because
Definitely.
when I come at them like, hello, they're like, no, thank you.
Right.
No.
And if these are juveniles, even when you're dealing with a child, if you're trying to tell a child something, you get below them. If you're trying to make a sale on somebody, don't stand in front of them and try to make a sale. Get on eye level or below their eye level to push your sale across to them. And also think of the fact too is people that come to this country, if they don't use their language enough, they start losing that language. Now the juveniles are probably used to their language and are used to some of the sign language, so they may maybe know a little bit of the English or whatever, but they can't practice it. So when they hear you speak it, you know, they might know a few of the words, but they have no other way to communicate with you. Just a thought.
Yeah. I have a
Have,
feeling I've been too aggressive. I
have,
have to sit back.
have have you ever read the book The Creature? Are you
No.
Mm,
familiar with that book?
no.
It's written by somebody named Jan Clement,
Oh.
which I guess is a pseudonym. They said that was actually a name of a baseball player.
Oh.
But anyway, they don't know who wrote this book. But he tells about this story of he had some problems with his wife, and he left. They split up, and he built a cabin up in the woods in this little land that he bought. And I think he was digging a pond at that time, and he was out every day. He would come out there and he'd work until it was getting close to sundown, and then he would sit on his porch and drink a beer. Did that every day. And then he said one day he saw something out of the corner of his eye, and he caught a glimpse of it, and it was this Bigfoot, which he ended up naming Kong because it reminded him of King Kong. And he, I think one time he was eating an apple when he saw it, so he tossed the apple over there, and it picked it up and started eating it. And then it started coming back, and he would toss it apples, and eventually it would come back pretty regularly. And the other book that I mentioned to you called Enoch,
Mm-hmm.
the guy in Florida, she
Mm.
asked him, the guy who was in Florida, about this book if he was familiar with it, and he said yeah. And she asked what he thought about it, and he said that he thought the reason that it came to him is because he was predictable. He did the same thing every day, day in, day out, work till dark, sit on his deck, drink a beer every day. So he got to where he knew where he's going to be. He was more comfortable with getting closer because he was predictable.
Mm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I think that is probably the key. There's some people that even go so far as wearing the same outfit every time, or same
Mm.
ball cap, and doing the same thing. Like I don't know if you're familiar with Shane Carpenter, Randy Harrington.
Mm-hmm.
They call it the 400. They've got a documentary on Amazon Prime. They they call it the 400. It's 400 acres of private property that they got access to, and that's what Shane was doing. Was he would walk the same path every time,
Yep.
same direction, and do the same thing for months. And he finally started getting glimpses of these juveniles, and he thinks that that's why is that he was predictable. He just kept doing the same thing every time he went.
Yep.
So,
It sounds like my story.
Yep.
Yeah.
and another thing I wanted to mention about that, in the book, the guy from Florida, he said at one point the one what he named it Enoch, it came with a female, brought
Mm.
a female to him, and I think there was a young female too, if I remember right. Like he thought it was maybe their child. Anyway, they left, and he tried to follow it, and he got so far he saw him go down this trail, and he went down to follow him, and he said it stepped out from a tree and shoved him backward, like don't follow
Mm.
us.
Wow.
And so he let it go, and he ended up he waited like a long time after it was gone, and started going that direction, and the swamp got pretty deep there, and he actually went into the swamp, and it was like up to his chin, and he was pretty nervous about going, but he kept on going through this area, and he came to like an island in the swamp. And it took him a while to get there, and when he did, he saw a bunch of them on this island. And what he talked about was he saw a bunch of them with young ones. And he did see the one that Enoch, the one that he had befriended there. But their theory was on it that it's something that Native Americans would do too. Is like in the wintertime when food is more scarce, if any of them that had young ones, they would have like a rendezvous point where they would all gather in the wintertime, and the males would go out and gather food and bring it back. So the mother could take care of the baby. And that was her theory, that even like she was up in Oregon, I believe is where she lived, the one that wrote the book. And she thinks there's remote areas in the mountains where they meet. And like, if they have a child that year, they will migrate there for the winter so that they can all work together.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
Wow.
I think that's one of the reasons why people they don't find the bodies or anything. One of the reasons, because they go where people do not go.
But he tells a story in that book, Enoch. He tells a story of when he went to that island and he saw him there. He heard this one scream. It was a female screamed, and it startled him. And he looked over, and she was carrying a baby, and he could tell it was dead.
Oh,
it's interesting because
and
I know
he said that. Well, he said that the males, they tried to take it from her at first, and she wouldn't give it to him, and then she finally did, and they dug a hole. And he said they laid like palm branches in there, laid the baby in the hole, and one of the males come walking back with an oak tree about 6 foot tall that it had pulled out of the ground, and they put it there and put all the dirt back. And he said you would never know it even happened, but that
wow.
it was like a grave marker, basically, where that oak tree is. That's where it was buried. But yeah, nobody will ever find that.
No, I think that's a lot of the reasons why so much information isn't passed around and utilized is because people, first of all, you got to measure that intelligence, like the three of us just did. Okay. And something that's that intelligent obviously has a family unit, obviously has a clan going on there. Let's take the next step on just making an opinion, because we would have to have a hypothesis to help people out in the scientific world there first. Okay. Let's just say that they have rituals too. And that would be a ritual. This is not the first case that I've heard of them being in a swamp area, a place that I hunted many years ago. We were having these screams coming from this swamp area, and we were told to stay away from it. That was people from the Connecticut side, okay, and they were doing war whoops. Well, my brother and I went in there anyways, and I got to tell you what, people don't go in those places hunting like that, because you might not come out of there. There's a lot, you have to really know it. There's a lot of what you may figure is shallow water is not shallow water at all. Could be well over your head, and it might be only a space that's only maybe 4 feet, 5 feet round, with a little brook trickling into it, and this just goes straight down 10, 12 feet. You might not come out of there. So I think that that's what they do. They go into these areas that are really inaccessible, or areas that they know you don't want to go to. The majority of people want to follow a little path, because that's a lot of fun, and you're kind of hoping that one's going to pop out. In my opinion, that's the equivalent of wanting to take a deer hunt, and you're going to go sit in downtown Westfield in the park with your bow and arrow and wait for a deer. Will it happen? Yeah, maybe not in your lifetime though, but it just might happen. You might not be there when it does happen, when it runs through. Okay, so I know that there's another individual, Joe Kiesk. It's his encounter. It came out of the swamp area. There was a dry land on the other side, and it came out of that swamp area right directly towards him. And again, that's that was like a bluff charge, very scary. But again, that's them going into an area that they know that we don't like to go to, because we physically They know our physical capabilities. We physically can't get into there, like that Cobble Mountain region area, that whole area where you are. That's a lot of that. You just don't know what's on the other side of that mountain road when you go walking through. You might be taking a step, and the next thing you know, you just fell down a 50-foot well or whatever is up and through there. And to be crawling up some of that stuff that's gonna take it out of you. You got to be next to being a mountaineer to get
plus all the briars.
the briars.
Walk right through.
I took one account that I shared with Paul here, and I believe I shared with you also, JJ, that people say, well, why can't we find a body? Well, we just gave one reason why you can't find a body. There's several other reasons, but here's another case where you might say, well, okay, that makes a lot of sense. Gentleman, I want to say down in Mississippi, another man by the name of Squatchman. Okay, not the first name though. Okay, and I'm very versed in his encounter, but after his grandfather died, who had a farm, and his grandmother and grandfather were actually feeding him. You know, he didn't really tell you. He found this out about years after that the grandfather had passed away, that he was actually feeding these things watermelons, growing them and feeding them watermelons. Well, after his grandfather had died, many years later, he went up there and he spent the night up there. His grandmother was no longer alive, but he spent the night in the old farmhouse. And he got up in the morning and there was a couple of watermelons on the porch. Now, some people might say, well, you know, who grew those? Well, you don't really have to worry about growing them. You take your garbage and do what we used to do when we were kids, have a garbage pile out back, and you'd be surprised that watermelons will grow from the seeds if you throw it out there. So quite obviously they had some kind of a pile somewhere where they were growing. So he was so taken aback by that, he decided that what he was going to do is go to the cemetery and visit his grandfather's grave. Well, here's what happened when he got there. He went to the grandfather's grave, and all the way around the grave site where his grandfather was buried, the headstone, there was interwoven briars. And in the middle of it was fruit.
Wow.
If you think about it like that, you're going to go searching for a Sasquatch body. Are you willing to? I mean, I wear some really tough pants when I'm out there. If I go out there in the woods, these briars aren't going to go through. But if you're not wearing them, trust me on this, you're gonna hurt yourself. These things are gonna leave some scars on you. It's gonna cut you open. Not to mention the fact that a lot of people want to walk down into some of these caves or crawl into some of these caves to check out these caves. I wouldn't do that. I grew up in Montgomery Mountain. That's Rattlesnake Mountain. You know, they den up. You gotta know. Never mind when they're denning up, they're gonna use it regardless. they're gonna be around that area. So I would recommend that you don't go into those areas. But does the Sabe, Sasquatch, Bigfoot people go there? Absolutely, because they know you're not going there, and that would be the place I myself would go. So nobody would find me. Okay, you wouldn't want to go in there to find me in the first place, but have a heavy food source nearby also. Okay.
Well, that most recent sighting in Ohio is down by you, Fort Ancient. There was a woman and her daughter were walking on a bike trail. You know, in Ohio, I don't know if they did it out where you're at, but in Ohio, they took a lot of the old railroad beds and they paved them and made them into bike trails or walking trails. Mm-hmm. And that's what they were on. And they saw this thing cross the trail ahead of them, not real far ahead of them. And they ran down to where it went, where it disappeared. They were going to try to follow it, and it was nothing but briars, and there was so thick there was no way they could even get through it. They don't know how it went through it, but it did. That's where it disappeared. I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but
no,
talking about inaccessible places.
Yeah, but that's our point, you know. But again, you know, if we go back and we take a look at everything we've been discussing here, everybody has a bias. I have a bias. You know, if you catch yourself in that bias, then that's a good thing. You know, you can take a better look at things. But in that bias, what we're doing is we're throwing away valuable information that's out there. You know, that and it really sticks out because you're looking at what do we have after 55 years from the Patterson Code? Tracks. Okay. Nobody's helping Melba Ketchum or anybody else pursue the DNA, forcing it, or making the phone calls, forcing it. Nobody's doing any of that. There's people that say, well, I heard the Sierra sounds, for instance. You know, a lot of people, they're aware of it, but they've never heard it before. And that's something you would have to sit down and become versed on. It'd be like playing a musical instrument. If you want to learn a song, you're gonna try to put that in your head too, along with your muscle memory. You know, but to just take bits and pieces and say, well, that's a little bit too bizarre, something like that, like the one that Paul was talking about on them being on that little island right there. Why is that? Do we throw it away because our bias is they're not that smart? That would be that's disheartening for me because they definitely are that smart. They definitely do have that family unit. They definitely do have that clan unit. And when we look at it, that's structure. That's some type of structure that they have. We don't find really dogs doing that too much of that kind of structure. I mean, yeah, coyotes will pack up, you know, and then they may have an area, you know, they may not like other coyotes or whatever coming into their area, but this is highly intelligent, and like you're saying, JJ, to not to get into the woo, it's a strong possibility. We can't say that these people are that you come on, it just disappeared. Well, yeah, it could have. I mean, I still remain skeptical on a lot of things. So for me, if something like that happened out in my backyard here, I'd be over there looking around. Is there a hole in the ground? Did it go down in a hole in the ground? Did it jump up in a tree? What's going on around there? That's what it takes, you know. If you're going to take a picture, try to communicate with it. You know, maybe it'll come out for a better picture. You know, and try to stop using your phones.
No, the phones they're not helping matters.
They're really not. People go, well, my phone's really great. I'm glad you think your phone's really great. You know, I have an iPhone. Okay, I think my iPhone is better than your Samsung, but I don't have a Samsung. But it makes no difference because the phone is taking a picture of information. People don't understand it. They think it's like a film. It's not. It's actually what your phone is actually capturing is information that's in the air that's sending that to your phone. It can't take a picture. There's no film in it. Does that make sense?
All pixels. Yeah.
Pixels. Those pixels are giving off bits and bytes, binary code. It's based. Everything is based on binary code, and that's what your phone.
Tiny little dark and light dots, and you put it all together, and you have a pixelated digital picture.
It comes up with something. That's how people are seeing us on here right now. Okay, it's all done with pixels, with bits and bytes. Okay, binary code, and that's what your phone does. Your phone is actually taking binary code out of thin air and deciphering it. It's given the green grass a code as compared to hay. Okay, because when they first came out, it didn't know the difference between hay and green grass. Now it does. The binary code is there, so it can actually go into your cell phone and make a picture. So try to stop using. Try to take a real camera. Think of the animals that you can photograph, like Paul, when you're out there. You know, the eagles and everything else. I mean, those are probably going to be things that your great grandchildren are never going to see. Might not ever see, but they can go back and look at your book and say, "Wow, look at that." You know, great grandpa Paul was actually a real photographer. Look at these. This did exist. This mountain lion did exist, or that raccoon. There's a raccoon. He actually seen one and took a picture of a raccoon. I'm not saying that you can't get pictures of other animals, because it does take that, but there's a lot of parables when you go into the trying to take a photograph of something that's in the woods, and it can move that quickly, you know, and you've got to figure that the distance too. You know, are you sure about the distance on what you're photographing? The further back it gets, the more your phone won't be able to pick up the binary code of the information necessary to separate it from a tree or leaves or branches, next to impossible. I shared one with Paul about a month ago on some birds in my backyard. Within a 10-foot circle, there had to be like maybe 50 of these little brown birds, and there was a cardinal off to the right of them, in with them, but off to the right of them a little bit, and all you could see was the cardinal. You couldn't single one of those brown birds sitting there. No matter how hard you looked at it, even if you blew it up, it just couldn't make out the form of the birds. The information.
They have a way of blending. They blend.
Yep.
Just to clarify, because I know what you're talking about, Ernie, in case people didn't catch what you're saying. What Ernie's referring to as far as the camera, he's talking about using the old style that actually used film, right, like the old 35 millimeter, rather than digital.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. With that, Paul, I got to get going here, JJ. If I'm sorry, you could excuse me and stuff, but I got to eat my dinner.
Oh,
okay.
Before I wait till.
And you probably got to get in the hot tub too, knowing you. But
that'll be later. Mm-hmm. All right, it's really been great speaking with you, JJ. Nice to see you.
Thank you, Ernie.
And also with you, Paul. Again,
always a pleasure.
Yeah. Yep. So let me know when you're going to release this and stuff, and to everybody, because I know it's not live right now, but yeah, it's recorded.
Right. I'll probably upload it tomorrow. It'll be up tomorrow.
Okay. So we'll try to put it out there to everybody. Thank you again, you guys.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ernie. Take care, man.
Okay, I gotta play with my. Okay, kick me out. Put me in the green room.
Okay, I'll kick you.
I see.
See ya.
There. Bye. Bye again.
Okay. Yeah, that I think you will really like that book if you read it, because another thing that he talks about is that she asked him to try to get a picture because she believed him, but she said people want to see proof, and they're saying if you're around it all the time like you're saying, why haven't you got a picture of it? So he put up trail cams, and he didn't see it for like 2 months.
Right.
So he took all the trail cams down, and he brought a camera in his bag, and it finally did come back. And when he pulled that camera out, it just flipped out on him. And he said it slapped him so hard that he flew over his boat into the water.
Wow.
Yeah, and he never brought a camera again after that. And he said, I don't care if people believe me or not. Obviously he doesn't want me to get the camera out, and I'm not going to do it. So
I believe him. I believe they know these devices. They know what they're for.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's nothing you can prove, but it's just logical deduction with how they react.
I don't know if they know what it is, or they just know that like people with a gun bring it up to their eye, and so that when they see a camera come up to their eye, and it has a long thing coming out.
Something not good.
Yeah. So I was going to say, like with that juvenile, you said you were wanting to get a picture, but you didn't know. One thing I've thought of trying, and maybe you already thought of it, is like pointing the camera at it, but like turn and act like you're looking behind you, or look the other way and take some pictures pointed toward it while you're looking away. So maybe that would get it to, look up. Maybe you could get a shot of it that way.
Yeah, an indirect approach.
Right.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I walk down the trail and I'll hold my camera facing like to my side, and I'll just keep looking straight ahead while I'm videoing, and I'll hold it like down at my waist, and I'll just walk along looking straight ahead. and maybe hope I can catch something peeking around a tree or something. Because
A
they are
lot of
so
people do the
fast.
backwards cams. A lot of
Yeah,
people
that
do
too.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even do that in ghost hunting too.
Because I have seen people where they've caught them, and it's almost like a cartoon. It's so fast that the way they pop back behind the tree,
Yep.
it doesn't even seem possible. But
Yep.
yeah, they're
And
because they know
apparently they
that.
can crawl like spiders.
Yeah, yeah, and they know that movement is what catches our eye. So, that's something that those two guys, the 400 that I was telling you about, they said they've seen where they thought they saw one, but it never moved. And I think they maybe had it on video where it moved to where it was so slow that you never really noticed the movement, but over 4 minutes time, its head's dropped down and eventually it's just gone. But it's so slow that you don't notice it unless you're watching it continually.
Fast motion on playback. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how they
So,
are. That's how bizarre it gets. Not that it's the woo. It could all be natural, but
right.
it's very bizarre, you know.
Yeah, there's a
Yeah,
lot of
I
that
was
book.
hoping Ernie could hear one more audio. Perhaps I'll just
Oh,
play it for him
yeah, I've got two of them
off the
still.
interview. The one where the deep voice vibrates the barbecue grill. That's the one with
Okay.
the slap house.
I'll bring that up.
I was interested what Ernie would think of that, but I'll have to do it with him some other time.
All right, I'll play it for you right here.
Okay.
So was that at your house or?
Yeah, that was 3 time periods one night at
Oh,
my house. The first was the slap on the barbecue grill, that bang, and then branches snapping around the yard. And then what sounds like an owl, that screeching.
yeah,
Woo!
right, yeah,
And then after that, there's the slap on the side of the house. It's a wooden sound, like slap. And then my mother, who I was her caretaker at the time, she was in her 80s. She's yelling for me, Jeff, which is my first name, and JJ just a nickname. Jeff, what? There's something growling outside the door, she said. Now, I didn't hear any growls, but on the recording, there's the slap.
Do you
And
think
then
she
there's
knew what it was?
She had an idea. She knew what it was. She would see the window peekers on occasion. And you hear that weird garbled calls from the woods. I'm not sure what those are. And then later on in the night, her TV is running, so you can hear the TV in the background. But then there's that really deep voice, and the voice is so deep that the metal of the barbecue grill seems to vibrate when it speaks because it's leaning over the barbecue grill. It's looking at that little Sony audio recorder. I had it set on the grill.
Oh,
And
okay.
it's probably looking right at the audio recorder, and it says something extremely deep, like, and the whole thing freaking vibrates with that. Now that's some powerful lung or vocal, or some could even say infrasound if they want to.
Do you have
Um,
a keyboard?
do I have a keyboard?
Yeah, like a piano keyboard.
Audio keyboard?
Yeah.
No.
I was just thinking. I was asking because I was thinking I'd be curious myself to just try different notes, tones, and find the one that actually causes a reaction. Because everything has, like an audio engineer. If you're doing like a concert, even nowadays they have these the mixing boards now will tune to a room because there's certain frequencies, and depending on the size of the room and the way things bounce off the walls, there's certain frequencies. If you're playing your music, you hit that one note, it's just going to do that. And they have mixers now that will tune that down a little, so you won't have that problem. But yeah, there's a certain pitch that is causing that grill to do that. If you can find where that, you can at least know what kind of frequency that is, as whether it's in the human range or whatever animal you might suspect, if it's below that range.
Right. That would be a good experiment. That would be. Now, this type of behavior around the house, someone might be like, why didn't you go outside? There have been several occasions where I do go outside, and it immediately stops and it goes away. So what I do now is I intentionally let them do their thing without trying to intrude into it. I knew there was a recorder out there, so I didn't want to contaminate what was going on.
How far was the grill from the window?
About 20 feet.
I mean, was it right by the house, or was it out away from the house?
20 feet into the yard.
I was just curious if maybe one of them was coming up to look in the window, and maybe one of them was saying, "Hey, somebody's coming," or whatever.
Could be, but the house slaps, something I'm used to, happens a lot. Sometimes small footsteps on the roof, like there's young ones up on the roof. You can hear walking, but it's not heavy walking. It's light. I know other people have reported that. And when I go out there trying to get an image or trying to interact, it just all stops. And I've done that many, many times. So now I let the audio, and once in a while I'll have a video camera placed outside. I'll just let them run, and I'll try.
Do you have motion lights out or anywhere around your house?
I have motion detector lights, yeah.
Because I'm sure you've heard, that like with the trail cams, they can maybe see IR. They seem to know. I heard of one lady talking about her motion light she had. She kept finding these sticks in her yard in a line, and she finally figured it out that if you went out at night and you went along where that line was, once you stepped over that line, that's what triggered the light. Like they knew.
Isn't that smart?
So that's something you might want to think about too, is with the motion lights, maybe turn them off, or check for any indication like that they're marking where triggers them. I don't know.
Right. Now, a lot of people see this behavior as threatening or aggressive. It's been my experience that when you go out to encounter them and they retreat, there's no threats going on. It's more of I can't really judge their motivation, but it's more of a playful kind of interaction for them. they
think the
just
juveniles do
enjoy
that.
doing it.
Right. The juveniles. In fact, that guy was talking about, he thought that they played a game to see how close they could get without him seeing them. Like they would take
Yeah.
turns coming in. Yeah, it's interesting that some of the things that they do. He said that
Yeah.
one of them knocked his hat off, snuck up on him and knocked
Ah,
his hat off and took off.
they call that counter cooing in native culture, right? You slap a bear. Yep. Or counter
Yeah,
coo. Am I saying that right? Something like
I'm not familiar with that, but
yeah.
Ernie
It
would
was
probably
a
know.
challenge where they would slap a black bear and retreat.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And
that's
and
very
you know
possible.
when they see our homes, it's forbidden territory. If you got like um, a hominid that's maybe a teenager, and you got a forbidden territory, aren't they going to want to rebel? Aren't they going to want to do what's forbidden and flirt with danger? You know, like
Yeah.
drag racing on the road. So that's sort of the way I interpret it, not as hostile, aggressive, throw rocks at the house and, try to get the people sort of thing, but
Well,
more
here's
of
something
a,
that you could try too. If I don't know if you ever heard of this, I thought it was interesting that somebody had tried was to take like a small dry erase board and draw a little stick figure or whatever of you and of it and leave it out there. And I would even draw it out where you do your gifting spot, draw it right there where in case they could see you doing it, and then leave it out there and just, I don't know, see if they
that's a
write
good
on it.
idea.
See if, yeah.
That's good. I've been also thinking of maybe doing a surface with handprints. Like I'll leave my handprint on it and see if they'll match it, showing how big they are.
Hmm.
So
That's something you could do
they're not
with the
afraid to
dry
leave
erase.
handprints on the car,
Maybe do that with the dry erase board. Hold your hand on it and trace around it, and then see if maybe they'll do the same thing.
Good idea. Definitely. So
Yeah.
Sasquatch season starting up again. January, February, and March are very quiet for me with no activity at all in any of the woods I go in, and the gifts aren't taken.
And that goes along with what I was talking about with that theory of that they might all gather in the winter in an area where they can take care of the. And also another thought that with her theory on that was that gives the older juveniles or whatever a chance to find a mate, maybe that they would all gather there together so they could find someone outside their clan, to breed with.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, they must know they have to diversify their mating. Like if brothers and sisters are mating, the result is not good. So they must know
Yeah.
this through
Yeah.
experience, hypothetically. Yeah. And the whole, like Ernie talks about this, the whole debate on whether they're intelligent or not, to me, it's always been a given. Because if they're
Yeah.
not intelligent, they would be in the Bronx Zoo. They would be like an orangutan or a silverback gorilla. They would not elude us. They would not outsmart us. They would
Yeah.
be in the Bronx Zoo and to be a stuffed one in the Smithsonian. So
Yeah.
obviously they're intelligent. It's either they're intelligent or they're mythical. Those are your two options because
Yeah.
the dumb gorilla Sasquatch, he'd be found, he'd be discovered, and he'd be collared.
Well, the sightings over. I'm in Western Ohio, obviously, and on our side of the state is more populated, much more populated, and yet there's a lot of sightings in this area over around Dayton and the surrounding areas around Dayton. And there's 3 rivers that come through into Dayton, and that's what I think that they travel those waterways They got trees down both sides. You'd never see them in the summer especially if they go at night down through there. And so, they obviously are able to stay out of sight with. I think my own personal opinion, like where I live, around where I live, is because it's a lot of farmland, and you got a lot of farmers who have 400, 800 acres, and maybe 200 acres of that is woods. They never use it. They don't. All they do is farm around it every year.
Yeah.
That woods just sits there. Nobody goes in. Maybe they might have somebody that hunts it in the winter, but that's about it. So they have places like that where they could stay temporarily and move around. I don't think they stay in any one spot for very long here, but
I believe the waterways are their travel paths.
yeah, for sure.
I think they can walk in a waterway without leaving tracks, or there's a rocky shore and they can walk on the rocks. I think they're careful not to leave tracks where they cannot leave tracks. I think they're that intelligent. They don't want to leave that much evidence.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the tracks that I find, they're in leaves and grass and foliage, but they're not in the mud. They're not stepping in the mud. They're not leaving me a nice 5-toed print that I can get all excited over,
Yeah. Yeah, and like we were talking about before, they're walking through areas that are not people aren't normally walking.
Yeah.
They're not walking on the trails like us. They might cross the trail, but they're not walking down a trail for very long.
And strangely enough, they're quiet. I don't know how they do it. Even when I record their vocals, you don't get much of the limb snapping and the walking sounds. They're very ninja-like.
I think when you hear them breaking sticks, I think they're doing it intentionally because, like I go out in the woods quite a bit, and my dog, I always took him with me. And there's many times I'd see a big buck or a pretty good sized deer take off, and I'd never hear it. I could see it running through the woods, and he'd be going along smelling the ground and not even notice it. And I'm thinking, how something that big going through the woods that fast without, making hardly any noise.
Yeah.
So
their skills are tremendous.
Yeah. Because talking about the breaking sticks, you probably heard of maybe have Salt Fork. That's one of the hot spots in Ohio. It's where they always have where they used to be the big conference in Ohio was, well, it still is, but I mean, there's a couple other places now where they have the conferences, but Salt Fork is where they've always had the Ohio conference.
Grassman Festival, or is that what they call it?
I think the Grassman one. Well, yeah, I guess it probably would have been out in that area. That's kind of the area that's known, even though people from Ohio don't ever say Grassman that I know, but it is known because of Monster Quest. That's kind of the name.
The documentaries. Yep.
But it's the biggest state park in Ohio, and it's very wooded, and the great thing about it is they are very Bigfoot friendly. They kind of push it as a tourist thing. I mean, they're building a nature center, and the nature center is going to have a Bigfoot that talks about the other animals. So they really, and the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, they have a whole video series about Bigfoot. So
how about that?
But anyway, what I was going to say is we camp out there several times a year. There's a group of us that goes out, and there's been several times. And this last time we went, me and a friend of mine, we sat right along the wood line. It's about 3 a.m. We'd already hiked a couple trails and really wasn't much going on. So we went over, everybody else was already asleep. And we just sat in a chair right along the wood line, and we could hear constantly. I recorded it. I need to make that recording a little bit louder so you can hear it. I posted it, but it's kind of hard to hear it in the where I need to make it louder. You can hear all these sticks breaking like something's walking just on the other side of the wood line. It's real thick. You can't see back in there, but something's walking back in there. I don't know, at night at 3 a.m. And I mean, they're not being quiet about it at all. Sometimes it sounds like they're just grabbing a branch and just snapping it off. I mean, it's loud. It's really loud.
Who knows what their motivations are? There's one night I recorded a lot of branch snapping. Just one night. I'm not sure what the motivation was or why.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Were they accumulating branches for a purpose? I don't know.
I don't know. To me, like I said, if you hear them, I think they're doing it intentionally. I don't think they are accidentally making noise. So I don't know what the reason is, unless they're just kind of letting us know they were watching us. I don't know. I mean, we didn't hear any vocals, anything like that, but it definitely sounded like you could hear something walking right on the other side of that wood line and big sticks breaking.
You could have had a situation where one was feeling the bravado of wanting to make himself known in some way. They had that push-pull, that approach avoidance. Some of them want to approach, but only to a degree. And of course, they had the natural avoidance because they know who we are and what we're capable of. So
yeah,
it's an odd thing, the approach avoidance conflict.
That book, that Enoch that I was talking about, he said there was one point where he would go to this place in the swamp. Is a really remote area, and he didn't say what the problem was, but he was having some problems with his in his life general. So he just kind of went out there to be alone, kind of get away from everything.
Yeah.
And that's when he started encountering this thing, and he would bring it food. And he said one time it would come to his camp all the time when he'd be there. And at one time he was there at the camp, and it was there, and he started to walk by it, and it like shoved him and knocked him down. And he jumped up yelling at him, like, why'd you do that? What's the matter with you? And he saw there was a snake right there under this log that he was right where he was getting ready to step.
Wow.
And when he saw it look over at the snake, and then he looked over and saw it. So it's just immediate reaction. He grabbed his pistol that he had on his hip. And he said when he did that thing, he just freaked out, and he put the pistol back and cut it with an axe. But he said that it knew what that gun was as soon as he grabbed it.
Yeah, he knew it was a threat. Yeah. So
it's an interesting book.
I'm going to have to check it out.
I guess this the person that wrote it, her name's Autumn Williams, and apparently she did a show back in the 70s about Bigfoot, and it was Doug Hychek that did the show. That was the producer.
Wow.
And I can't remember the name. She mentions it in the book. I found on YouTube. There's one episode that I found of it where she's on there, but kind of interesting. She lived in, I think it's either Oregon or Washington. I think it was Oregon though. And she had a sighting when she was really young with her mom. And then she's always had a fascination since then. Wow. And I think she had started a research thing, and that's how she ended up getting on that show, or starting with that show. Kind of interesting to hear her story. That she's first 2 chapters, I think, is her telling her story, and then she talks about this guy contacting her from Florida, and they just kind of message back and forth quite a bit. And I think at one point she actually went down there, but it's really interesting to hear that the things that this guy talks about. Definitely sounds credible to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. There's so
And
many people.
the other book I was telling you about called The Creature,
Mm-hmm.
you can find that in the audible version on YouTube where they read it. You can
Oh,
listen to
okay.
it. Yeah,
I'll
it's called
check
The
into
Creature.
that immediately. Yeah.
Yeah. And that guy, he says he was a professor at a college in Pennsylvania. This all took place in Pennsylvania, where he met this one that he named Kong. And his take, I don't know what he was professor of in at the college, if even if it's a true story, but it sounds very believable when you read it or hear it. And he has like more of a scientific approach. He very analytical and very scientific in his whole interactions with it. So it's a lot different than the guy from Florida. He's more like a redneck hillbilly that just likes to go to the swamp and then got to meet this creature and get to know it.
So he didn't have intent to research. It's
No,
something that just occurred.
well, that was the way with both of them actually. I mean, the other
Yeah.
guy, the one in Pennsylvania, it just came. He would sit out on his porch every night drinking his beer, and it showed up, and he was tossing it apples, and it kept coming back for apples, and that's what the guy in
Wow.
Florida was saying that they wanted the food. That was the main thing that they wanted the food because I've looked into that a little bit. Like bodybuilders will consume as much as 5,000 calories a day,
Oh yeah.
and something that's 9 foot tall and looks like a bodybuilder, they got to be putting in some calories every
Yeah.
day
How
to
do they
maintain
do it,
that muscle
right?
mass.
How do
But then
they
you
do
think
it?
about where you're at, moose, they're living on just vegetation.
Moose
So
can do it and black bear. Yeah.
yeah, and they said black bear right before they go into hibernation, they can consume up to 20,000 calories a day to prepare for hibernation.
They know what they're doing.
So yeah,
Definitely.
so the food's out there, and then like we've talked about, you wonder how trusting they are of getting food from humans, or do they even want their young around that? They don't want them to learn the easy way. They want them to learn to work for it, and because it may not be available,
Right. Right.
So
My experience with that has been that they'll sample food without consuming it for a while. They'll just sample it. Now we had crabapple trees and small apple trees in our backyard area, and those would be cleaned out every autumn. They'd be
yeah,
cleaned up. They wouldn't be on the ground. They'd be gone. So
even
they
up high.
they like the apple trees. Yeah.
Well, this is something I've thought about. I don't have a area like you do where I could gift something because the only place I could go really close to me, because like I said, I think they're on private property. I would love to find somebody who has private property that would say, hey, I think they're here, come out and check. But I'm not that lucky. But the only place I go to is parks where
Oh yeah.
everybody's going. So
Yeah.
it's not so easy to gift or anything. But if you have a place like close to you, one thing I had thought about trying is taking jars and poking holes in it so that in the lid so they could smell what's in there. But not. I've heard raccoons can open jars. I don't know, but most things aren't going to be able to open them. So the other thing I thought of is I would hang them hang them from I'd make like a rope with a hook and hang them
Right.
on a limb, so they'd be like 6-7 foot in the air.
Oh yeah.
So that
Yeah.
way, what's going to be able to get to that jar, and if they do get to the jar, what's going to be able to open it? So That kind of
No,
narrows it down.
my guys, they would take peanut butter jars and leave the lid, but they would take the jar. It would be gone.
Yeah, I've heard
So,
of
if a raccoon unscrewed the lid, which I know they can, they usually just dig in right there and do their thing.
right.
Once
I've
in a
heard of people
while,
finding
I would find a peanut butter container and it would be clean, like
right,
perfectly clean, like it went through a dishwasher. You know,
right. That's what
no
I was just getting ready to
streaks, no
say. Yeah,
residues. Yep,
yeah,
yep. So
yeah. I've
they
heard of
get
that too.
every little tiny smidge. Lately, I do small honey containers. They unscrew the lid, leave the lid behind, and they might clean out the honey. Now, honey's sticky, and that container will be perfectly cleaned out.
Hmm.
Not even a streak.
That's crazy.
Yeah, yeah. I pictured them bringing the jar down to the brook and getting water in there and scooping out what little residue of honey they can. And that's why when
Yeah.
they leave I had the containers, in my little evidence stash. They're just perfectly sparkling clean, like they went through a dishwasher.
Did you see any like fingerprints or anything on it?
No fingerprints and
Any
no tooth
oily or?
marks. No tooth
Hmm.
marks, no fingerprints. Yep.
Do you ever find the lids?
The lids will be unscrewed and unbroken. Well, once in a while broken. Once in a while broken, but no tooth marks. Like, if a bear or an animal is going to tear into the thing, it's going to be ripped apart and there's going to be
Yeah.
tooth marks because, they have to use their mouth to rip things open.
Right. Have you ever
Except for
tried hanging them?
raccoons.
Have you
I
ever tried
haven't
hanging
tried
them?
hanging them. No, I haven't tried the hanging, but that's a good idea.
Yeah, because that then it's not a bear or it's not likely a raccoon, especially if you use like fishing line and make a hook and hang it. I was thinking about getting like a telescoping fishing rod
Right.
or a selfie pole and use that
Now,
to telescope it out and hang it on a branch up high.
that's a
I
good
don't think,
idea.
I don't think a raccoon's gonna be able to get to it.
No, they're not that
That's
talented.
that's what I mean. If
Once in a
it's
while, I'll know when a bear gets it because a bear will leave its bear damage on it. They'll rip
yeah,
it to shreds. There'll be giant bear teeth marks everywhere, and it'll be ripped into tatters. Because bear they'll use whatever means necessary to get to the good stuff, and they'll rip it open big time.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Huh.
So when I encountered the delicate, clean containers, the unscrewed caps, I'm like, that's strange. Yeah.
Well, what gave me the idea of the trash can? The one guy that's out there at the 400, he was talking about in Oklahoma. He went to this campground, and it was the first time he had a sighting. And he was What he did was he stayed in his campground. He was all by himself. It was like in the winter, I think, or late fall, and he set up a tent that was like a dummy tent, and he stayed in the truck, and he covered the windows with blankets so that they couldn't see in the truck, and he would just like pull the blanket back a little and peek out the window, and they came up at night. But he said
Wow.
he thinks it was this juvenile was going down through, and they had all these trash cans, metal trash cans down through the campground, and they all had cinder blocks sitting on them. And he said he could hear the lid coming off and the lid go back and the cinder block being put on.
Wow.
And then he found out later, he didn't know at the time, but he found out later there was another guy, a researcher, who had been baiting those trash cans. So it was coming along looking to see if there's anything in them.
How
And
about that?
that gave me the idea of put a trail cam in there. So when it pulls that lid, boom.
Snap.
Because if they could see the IR, they're not going to see it till they pull the lid, and then it's too late.
Right.
So
Of course, you just might end up with a blur or a hand, but
Right.
it's something.
You never know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but the question is, if you did that, are they smart enough that they know I'm never doing that again, or they'll never open a trash can again if you catch them once? I don't know.
Yeah, they wouldn't appreciate it. And I walk a fine line with it with my encounters where I'm trying not to offend them too much.
Yeah, that's the
they
problem. Chance you take.
they don't want to be tricked, and they don't want to be encountering little traps. So
Yeah, I've heard a
it,
lot of stories where that people leave a trail cam and they'll come back, and the trail cam will be like turned 45 degrees away from where they had hung it, like something moved it around, so it's not aiming where they normally would go or whatever.
the story of the trail can that was buried under leaves and debris, and it supposedly filmed a leg.
Oh, I never heard that.
Oh, that was on YouTube for a while. It was popular. It was like a big hairy leg, and whatever ripped on the trail cam, buried it under a bunch of debris and dirt. And yeah, it wasn't like a bear leg. It was like a human leg, but hairy. So that was
Well, I
an
know that
interesting video.
the guy I keep talking about is a friend of mine. He's out of the one that's out at the 400. He likes to make these things for his recorder, where he takes a log and he hollows it out, and he has his recorder or camera inside of a log, and so it's not so obvious what it is. But I still think they know when they see something out of place. It's like somebody leaving something on your coffee table. You're going to notice it when you walk by. It wasn't there this morning or whatever.
Right.
Kind of the same thing.
Do you
So
know
another idea I've had to try, depends on whether they can see IR or not, or whether they just notice things out of place, is the trail cams, to cut a whole bunch of blocks of wood that are the exact size of a trail camera and print off a picture, glue on there so it looks like a trail cam, and put them up in different places and just leave them there for a couple of months, and then go back and just swap one of them out for a real one. If it's just
that makes
something,
sense. Yeah,
because they might go up and check it out and think, oh, that's just a piece of wood.
another decoy.
Then,
yeah,
right. And then all of a sudden you swap one that's a real thing. Maybe they would be tricked by that. But
the late Scott Carpenter, he would advise people who were feeling terrorized by Sasquatch coming around their house, not only the motion detection lights, but post a trail cam at every corner of the house, because when they see the cams, they don't like it and they don't come near. Yeah. And apparently that works. I think that's a good Sasquatch deterrent. If people are feeling threatened or intimidated, put your trail cams around.
Yeah, I had a friend that told me, I never heard this before, but she called it booger lights. So that's what the people call them there, and I never heard that term before, but that makes sense that would get that name. But
that's good.
Them, in the South, they call them boogers.
Yeah, wood booger. Yep.
And another name I don't know if you're familiar with is catamount. That's a old name they used to call them. I think it's more in the South, but yeah, that's, if you look up, if you see any literature or some old street signs or things like that from a long time ago, how they'll name a road, you kind of wonder where it got that name.
Wow.
Because there's I don't know, are you familiar with Linda Eastburn? She does these interviews all the time. She interviewed Ernie. Well, she interviewed a guy, I think it's in Georgia, and it's called Wildman Bottom Road, I think is what it's called.
Wow.
And that's where he had a sighting. And so, if it's got a name like that, there's got to be a history to that.
It's got the history going back, like the Winsted Wildman going back.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Or,
I like the fact that back in the old days they were calling them wildmen. They weren't thinking
right,
Gigantopithecus and apes
right,
and gorilla. Well, actually, they were thinking gorillas because a lot of the articles with Winsted Wildman were hypothesizing it might be an escaped gorilla from a zoo
yeah,
or a traveling sideshow. So they
but
did have that in their mind, but generally they were called wildmen.
yeah. And then you also have like Devil Mountain or something like that. That a lot of times that might have a history too. So
Definitely, definitely. Where Ernie was talking about in Massachusetts, there's something called October Mountain that has a reputation for Sasquatch sightings, and that's like to the west of our area, but not that far to the west. I mean, these are small states, so
yeah,
it's Ohio's a big state. These are small areas.
it's something that came to me one day. I never thought about it, but if you remember the old uh, what was his name? Uh, it was the Lone Ranger. I think is who I'm trying to think of. Lone Ranger, and his Native American friend that he called Kemosabe
Yes.
Sabe.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm
Sabe.
wondering,
Yep.
if there, because I guess it means friend. Yes. So yeah, it has that name in it, Sabe, Kemosabe. So
I
I
often
don't know.
thought that they're
It'd be
native,
interesting to look that up.
like with the Sierra sounds, with the chatter between the male and the female that are hypothesized to be a male and a female. Not the samurai,
Yeah.
roar, but that rapid chatter. It
Yeah.
does.
Yeah.
It has a native like quality along with the grunts and the snorts. Like the grunts and the snorts make you think, was this a gorilla? You know, but then there's vowels and consonants.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. It definitely sounds like language, like talking. uh, Several places there. So yeah, it's
and they
definitely
weren't too
interesting.
happy either.
No. No. And
And I often,
I don't think Ron Moore had ever had a sighting except quick glimpses. I think that's all he said he's ever seen out there. All the times he's been out there, that they've never like stepped right out and looked at him or anything. That he just caught like a glimpse out of the corner of his eye or something. Quick flash of him
I
jumping
love
behind the
the fact
tree.
that they're repeating the phrases back at the Sasquatch, like
Yeah, yeah,
Charura, and then he yells back Charura.
yeah,
It's all good.
yeah.
It's
It is
great.
comical.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't know why that people dismiss that. To me, the Sierra sounds is even more impressive than the Patterson Gimlin film to me because it's demonstrating something. It's showing intelligence, and
Especially where it's at. I mean, talk about a remote area.
yeah, and they're not afraid to let loose in the Sierra Nevada range. Where they are, where you go in through horseback, and you have to
Yeah,
ride like a few days to get there.
it's like
The
8 miles back there.
the Sasquatch they can let loose, they can yell, they can make themselves known. I have a theory that if you're going to encounter them like I do in residential areas, they're toned down. They don't want
Right,
a whole residential street to hear them, so
right.
they're not
They're
going
not.
to scream and yell.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah,
So it's a whole different quality. It's more toned down. It's more human-like, if you would, because there's a lot of whispering and murmuring, like you know. But it's
and
toned down on purpose.
and even there, you know, Ron Moorhead talks about there was a lot of times they went there and never heard anything. So
Hmm.
is obviously they wanted to come in close and kind of check him out or make contact or something. Yeah, Ron always said he thought that they were trying to communicate. That's the way he felt, that in some way they were trying to make a communication with him. So he was
Yeah,
really
like
excited when Scott said that it's definitely a language that.
yes, yes, and he could hear the repeated phrases and syllables and vowels. And he also noted that there are certain consonants they don't use, and there are certain things that are favored and not favored, and there's a certain structure to their mouth and their throat which isn't human, which
No, he said
is
where he talks about them breathing in while they're talking, and Scott even demonstrates it. We can do it, but it just sounds really odd when we try to talk on the
yeah,
while you're
it's more
breathing in.
like a possessed voice, like in an exorcism movie or something, like like
Yeah,
that,
and he was saying
but
that the rapid fire communication is like they're answering while the other one's still finishing their sentence. It's just so fast, like their brain is processing it so quick.
and the only fast chatter I've ever recorded is with that shrill, young, almost sounds like a baby voice. It's chattering fast, like you would picture a monkey chattering, and it's nothing so wonderful though that I could pull out certain vowels and consonants. It's just a crazy sound that it's not fish or cat, it's not raccoon, you know. You just do the animal comparisons, and what you're left with is what you call, just I call them the unknowns. When I want to be careful in the interview, I can't say with 100% certainty that this and that recording or this photograph is of a Sasquatch, because unless you're right on top of them, you don't know. So I just call them the unknowns. But I feel like all the phenomena that's surrounding it points to Sasquatch. The branches, the foot impressions, all of that, the wood knocks.
Yeah. Well, some of the sounds you've got on those recordings, that doesn't sound like any kind of other animal.
Oh, I got all sorts of recordings. I do, because they tolerate that audio recorder, and like you said, we're saying about it, it's good at close range. But if you're in the Sierra Nevada mountain range, it probably wouldn't be much good there. So it's only good for close range.
You said you had one of the ones with the dual microphones?
Yes, like I have a long distance recorder with the dual stereo microphones and worth several $100s, and it just picks up so much ambient noise out there that you literally have to listen to hours and hours without looking for peaks and valleys, because there are no peaks and valleys. It's just all noise is recorded.
Yeah.
So then I just ended up preferring the primitive little cheap recorders.
It sounds like it picks it up pretty good. But I was going to say mine, the one I was talking about, it picks up really well, but it only goes for like 4 to 5 hours. But if I have it, I can plug it into an outlet and it'll run, till the memory card's up. So that,
so
if you're
it will
recording
train its
outside
power source. Yeah. 5 hours, so it will train its power source.
It'll run the batteries out, but I can plug it into an outlet and it'll run all night, no problem.
Yeah, that's my Sirius recorder. It's good for about 5 hours. Yeah.
Can you plug it into an outlet like that, or?
Yeah, you could like plug it into an external power battery. Like they sell those external.
I mean, like a regular outlet, like in your house.
No, I don't think it plugs into a regular outlet.
Oh, because mine. I've done it before. I've run an extension cord out because where I live, it's all wooded around me, and I can't say that I really heard anything unusual, except we have heard a couple times where something's hit the side of the house,
Mm,
like late at night, sometimes like 1 or 2 in the morning. It's
right.
happened. It's happened 3 times now. I mean, real months apart. Just one hit, just something hits the side of the house.
Very loud,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
a real slap.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's happened. Like I said, months apart. Forget all about it, and months later, all of a sudden you hear it again in the middle of the night. So, though last time it happened, it was raining pretty hard. So I thought maybe a limb fell off a tree and hit the house or something, but no limbs out there. So I don't know.
The last time I left honey at the gifting spot, the next morning I was awakened by 3 knocks on the house. Knock, knock, knock. And I thought it was someone at the door. So I went to investigate the door, and there was no one around. It was just 3 knocks with no one. And sometimes I get the impression that it's a communication or an acknowledgement that they received what I left, you know.
That's possible.
So the timing would suggest that the next morning, you know, either
Out
that
there,
or it's paranormal, and I've been into that world, so.
out there where I go, it's a dam. It was built like in 1920, 20 something, 21 or something like that, and it was built by the Army Corps of Engineers. But it's just a creek that runs along my house. Actually, my property runs right up to the creek. It's all wooded right up to there, and then that creek goes down to where this park is that I go to, the reservoir. It's only a couple 100 acres of woods there, but
Hmm.
I have had some. I've never seen anything. I can't say I've heard wood knocks, but other than that, and a whistle. I heard. My wife heard it too. We actually, to me, it sounded like a bird from the jungle. Is what it sounded like. It sounded like a bird, but it didn't sound like any bird I've ever heard in Ohio ever. And it was
Tarzan
loud.
movie. Yeah.
It was my dog had run down there. It was in a ravine. He'd run down. He would do that all the time. He'd run down into the ravines and come back up. And he had just run down there when we heard that whistle come from down in that area. It was loud. My wife's like, "What kind of bird is that?" And I was like, "I don't know if it was a bird. I don't know. It didn't sound like any kind of bird I've ever heard."
The sound file I gave you with the grunts and the puffing, the grunting, angry sounds. That sound file goes on for 20 minutes. Actually, that's just like a
Oh,
high.
really?
And
Huh.
at the end of the sound file are whistles and bird calls. And it wasn't dawn yet, so.
Did any of them sound like not a native bird?
They sounded like native birds.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
they were right by the recorder where the grunters and the growlers were, and it wasn't dawn, and I don't know. It's all guesswork when you're not actually there to witness it.
I wish I would have had my recorder going that time. I usually do take it with me, record while I'm walking, but I didn't have it that particular time. But
That's me. I
yeah,
always have a recorder going.
so I would take
There's
my dog. I was going there like 3 or 4 times a week, and I would just hike back to the creek there, and then turn around and come back out. And I would do that every time. On one side of the creek, it's up on a ridge, and then on the other side of the creek, it's the bottomlands, the wooded area there. So sometimes I do one side, sometimes I do the other.
Wow.
But one time where I was doing that, it's just maybe a half mile total, all the way back and then all the way back out to the car. And it doesn't take that long, half hour or so, and it was just our routine. And I would hang. I got to where I put some black thread and hung it about 8 foot up,
Mm.
different places. And every time I would go, I'd take a little twig and I'd reach up and check. Yeah, it's still there. And every time we go down through there, I'd check it, and it was there for months. And then the one time I checked, it wasn't there, and I checked all the spots. All of them were gone. And I thought,
Wow.
huh?
How about that?
Well, I didn't think nothing about it. I thought, well, I didn't think anything would come of it other than maybe, okay, I know something made it break. It's kind of odd that maybe a tree branch fell and broke in all those spots at the same day. That's not very likely. So anyway,
Yes. Something big.
a couple weeks later, maybe a month later, I'm walking down through there, down the trail, and I felt something on my leg, and I stopped and I looked down, and it was that black thread across the trail. It was just above where my dog ran under it. He didn't even notice it, and I wouldn't have noticed it except I felt it hit my leg, and yeah, it was like tied across the trail right at knee high.
Oh, that's great.
So, I don't know. It's a park where people go, so
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can't rule out human, but
That's got a little humor to it.
and the one time I went back there, it was in the wintertime. I think it was in February. And I went all the way back there and then turned around, was coming back out. And there was a little bit of snow, not on the trail itself, but like it in the woods on the ground here and there, just a couple of little places. But anyway, I'm coming back down the trail, coming back out to the car, and there's this big block. I'd say it's about 2 foot diameter and maybe a foot high of solid ice with leaves stuck in it right there in the middle of the trail.
Wow.
I mean, it was like
Wow.
frozen snow, I guess I should say. It wasn't really ice, but it was like frozen snow. It was real hard. I stepped on it and it wouldn't break, and it was right there in the middle of the trail. It wasn't there when I went back, but on my way back out to the car, it was there. And there was nobody else there, so that was pretty odd. I thought when I saw it, I thought maybe it was a squirrel nest. You know how they put all the leaves together up in a tree somewhere, and then maybe snow got on it. That's what I thought maybe it could have been, but there was no trees right above, right there where it was. I don't know. It was just one of those things that you scratch your head and wonder
Yeah,
about.
once I found a little base of a seedling with an interesting root structure, and it was just sitting on the trail, and it made like a tripod formation,
Huh,
and it was dead. It wasn't just ripped out of the ground or anything, but why is
that's
it
funny
there?
because
Yeah.
a friend of mine, she said she went down a trail, kind of like what I was just talking about, and then came back. And when they came back, there was like a little teepee structure on the trail. It wasn't there on the way in, but on the way out, it was there.
Wow. Wow.
So, and one
Yep.
time when I was on the other side of the creek on the bottom area with my dog, we went way back in there and turn around, come back. There's nobody there. It's just us. We walked back in there. We're coming back out the trail, and I started seeing these little twigs on the trail, like with green leaves on them, like they'd
Hmm.
just been pulled off or fell off. But I mean, they're all down the trail. I noticed the first one, and then I noticed another one. I thought, wait a minute, why are these on the ground? And I kept walking. There's another one. Walking a little farther, there's another one. I don't know. It's almost like they're just like trying to see if I'll notice. Or I don't, or maybe somehow they fell off. It wasn't like it was real windy or anything. And usually green twigs don't just fall off the tree like that. But
Right. Right. Yeah, that's all suspicious stuff. Did you ever hear grunts?
no, I've never heard.
Yeah.
I've left a recorder out there a couple times. I've never heard anything on it. I've never heard any other than wood knocks. I've heard wood knocks out there a few times.
Hmm.
One
Hmm.
time, one time it was like 5 real fast knocks.
Mm.
And it was like it was a good ways away from where I was at, but it was in a wooded area. I don't know.
You ever have anything tossed in your direction? Sticks, rocks, or pine cones?
No, not that
Mm.
I'm up. No, but I have found a couple places out there. I found where I thought it was just a dead tree, and I went over and picked it up, and it was not. It was like a stick shoved in the ground, and it looked
Rammed
like
in.
yeah, it looked like a small tree. And then I pulled it out of the ground. There's no roots or anything. Well, that's weird. I thought that was a tree. I've
I
seen
find
that a
those a
couple
lot.
places. Oh
I
yeah,
find those a lot. Branch stabs, I call them.
huh.
They'll take a sizable branch, at least three
Yeah,
or 4 inches wide, and they'll
yeah,
ram it, and it goes down like 7, 8 inches into the ground. So
yeah.
it's not like it fell from a tree and maybe went in an inch. These things are thrown in with force, like rammed into the ground. Yep.
I found that, and I found a vine that was like woven around a tree, around some branches woven in and out. I mean, it could have grown that way, but it seems kind of odd that it would have. But
That's
other than
awesome.
that, yeah, I don't know. I just keep going there, hoping eventually. I have heard sometimes where it sounds like something's walking, but I never can. It's a lot of places it's pretty thick right through there, and you can't see very far in. But there's been a few times where and like I said, we don't have bear or anything like that. They're deer, but usually they're not going to walk along on, on a thick part right beside you in the daytime. They're not going to
Hmm.
hang around. I don't know.
I encountered something strange once. It was wintertime, and there was fresh snow on the ground. And there were fresh urine stains at the base of 4 different trees with no tracks.
Hmm.
I'm like, what left these sizable yellow urine stains without leaving tracks, and then I was thinking, was this something going tree to tree? I mean, was this something that
Jumping.
was, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, that's a possibility. I don't know. But they were sizable urine stains. It's not like a little tiny animal would do. It's more like what a canine would do,
Hmm.
you know. So that was strange.
Yeah, that's really odd. I've never found any tracks out there. Well, one time I did. There's a really marshy, swampy area uh, right by this little lake there, and I found some footprints going into the water there. I know people go down there to fish every now and then, but I don't know. Kind of odd that they would walk out in that mud because I mean the prints were like 4 or 5 inches deep where something walked
Wow.
out there, and they weren't
Some,
huge. They were human size, but I
something
don't
with
know.
weight, though. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and they were
And then
human shaped. But
I had another occasion where I left the small cheap audio recorder in the woods, and there was something that kept walking up to it and peeing. And he urinated with that recorder like 4 different times that night. So it's like, who has the sense of humor?
now, one thing I'd like to ask you is, have you ever seen eye glow?
Yes.
Not eye shine, but eye glow, where there's no light
Uh,
on it.
Actually, no. I can't say I've seen eye glow. I think more eyes shine. Yeah.
Because out there at Salt Fork, uh, I did just a couple times now. I've seen it where it looks like it's a pair of eyes. In fact, the first time I saw it, I thought it was deer
Wow.
because I shined my head. What happened was, you know what a shofar is?
Mm-hmm.
It's from a kudu. It's that spiral long
Yes,
horn
with
that
the
you blow.
horn. Yep.
Yeah. Well, I've got one of those, and I blew it out there, and then on our way in on the trail, it was like around midnight, I think, somewhere around there, and we were hearing stuff on both sides of the trail, stuff moving around, and so we were kind of keeping our eye out because we kept hearing it. We got back in there, and I blew that because I'm thinking, for one, it's like an ancient sound. And for two, it's something they probably never heard before. And I'm thinking curiosity is one of their biggest weaknesses, I think. So I thought I'd blow it, see if anything came to check it out. And then I heard something moving. It's a big pine grove right there where we were at. And I heard something. So we were all in the dark, had our lights off. I turned my headlamp on and shined it over there, and I saw some eyes. So I told people with me, I said, "Hey, I see some eyes." And they're like, "Where?" And they turned theirs on, and we're all looking, and we didn't see them no more. And then I saw they moved down a little farther. So I said, "Oh, they're down there." So we walked down a little farther, and we could see them over there. We turned our headlamps off, and we could still see them with no light on. And they were about as high. Well, it's hard to tell because the ground sloped down back in there. But they were about as high up as what deer would be, and they were about as big as deer. So at first I'm trying to rationalize. I'm thinking that's got to be deer. But, then I'm thinking, well, there's no moon out. It was been raining off and on, so there's no moon out. It's all cloudy. It's really dark, and we could still see them really clear, like you were shining a light at them, but none of us had a light on. And sometimes you'd see them like go behind a tree and then they'd come back out. There were just two of them, two sets of eyes that I saw. And we watched them. We stood there on the trail just talking, watching them for, I don't know, several minutes.
That's amazing.
Then I saw a pair of orange ones, big ones. They were like size of quarters, and they were about that far apart, 4 or 5 inches apart. Pretty big, and they were way up, a lot higher than the ones we were seeing. And they just like moved behind a tree, and that was it. Didn't see nothing else after that.
Wow.
And the couple I was with, they were from New Jersey. They went back the next day, and they went over on the other side where we were hearing stuff walking. They found an 18.5-inch print that they casted over on that side.
Nice.
Yes.
Wow.
And then there's another time where we were back on a totally different area of the park, back this trail at night. It's like 3 a.m. And I saw a light over in this area. It was all wooded back in there. And over in that general direction, there's a trail that goes back there. And I thought, well, somebody must be on that trail with a flashlight. Because, I mean, that's how bright it was and how big it looked. I thought it was like a headlamp or a flashlight. But it wasn't moving like a flashlight. It was just staying in one spot for quite a while. And then we saw 2 of them, just like I saw that orange one. They were about the same distance apart and pretty high up. Hard to tell how high up because it's so dark. But then I realized they're not flashlights. It's 2 lights moving around. And then they disappeared, but
that's wild. Wow.
I've heard other people talk about seeing their eyes glow like that, but I don't know.
There
that's
are
why I like to ask people.
There are people with videos of that, apparently. So I don't know what would make that eye glow.
That same time that we saw them, on the opposite side of the trail, we kept seeing a real small pair, real small. I mean, it didn't look like it looked like it could have been like a raccoon or something as far as the size and how far apart they are. I'll say that. But they were glowing bright, real bright. And we watched them for quite a while. They were like close to the ground. So I'm thinking that maybe something's crawling up looking at us, but they would like get real bright and then they would get dim again. Then they get real bright and get dim again, and
I've heard
they
that.
stay the same distance apart. I don't
I've
know. I
heard
can't explain it.
that the eyes will intensify and dim.
Right. Yeah.
That is,
And we watched them for a long time there on that. I don't know. I don't have an explanation for it.
that's wild.
I don't know.
That is really wild.
I don't want to come right out and say that was a small Sasquatch, but I don't know.
You'll have to call them the unknowns again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I don't know of any animal that's eyes glow like that. So
no, it's illogical.
Yeah, I mean, I think Tasmanian devils, their eyes glow like that sometimes, but I know they're not native to Ohio, so
yeah,
I don't know.
Bioluminescence.
No.
And
I heard one guy.
It's related to the orb business. I don't know.
I heard one guy talking about seeing the eyes that were orangish red colored, and he compared it to like when you inhale on a cigarette, the way they would get real bright and then get dim again. He said that's what it looked like when you inhale on a cigarette.
I have video. I have video of orange like eye shine in the bushes, and I've had so many laptops live and die that I've been unable to locate it.
But was the flashlight with a flashlight on them, or
no, but they were within 30 feet of a porch light.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it could be the porch
light. Pretty bright, or?
They were pretty bright.
Hmm.
Yeah. I wish I could find that video.
Yeah, I wish I would have been able to video that when I saw them eyes. It was at night, so I don't know if it would have even picked it up on a camera, but it was something to see. I'd like to see it again.
One of my clips, there's a blink too. You can see the orange and then the blink. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Now I have seen people get eye shine like that with a light at night, and you see them blink. So,
of course, it's all inconclusive. You don't exactly know what it is,
right?
But
it's not their buddy out there playing along to do a prank, because humans their eyes don't glow like that, don't reflect light. So,
right. So it would either be from nature or it would be an unknown part of nature, Sasquatch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't know. Definitely interesting.
Definitely.
Well, we're 2 hours and 42 minutes. I think
wow. What a long question, huh? You're going to have a major editing.
This might be a record. I don't know. I know I've gone at least 2.5 hours.
I enjoyed this very much. It was very fun.
I did too.
Yeah. So we should do it
again, especially if you get some new evidence, or like I said, if you come across some other stuff you want to share in your audio.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have multiple hours of audio. I could maybe share that shrill chatter and get your opinions, and maybe there's a natural thing that I haven't thought of.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll sign off for here for now, and I'll upload this so it'll be available tomorrow. So
okay, awesome.
Thanks everybody who made it all the way to the end of this. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.
Talk to you later.
Yep. Take care.